And we have journeyed out to the neighborhood of Union Hill, I suppose you could call it, not too terribly far from Hardin. And we're in the home of Tessie Smith, widely known to most Marshall Countyans. She's taught school in the county. And I hope we don't embarrass her too much, but on the program we're looking for those answers sought by the State Archives in Frankfort, the West Kentucky History Project, Forrest Pogue Library of Murray State University, and for the Marshall County Library. All of this is made possible by a grant from WCBL and Shelby McCallum, who is also with us here in the living room of Miss Smith's home. Miss Tessie, do you mind telling us how old you are?
79.
79 years young. Well, that's very good. And were you born in the county?
I was born in Marshall County. Close to the Glade community.
Now, Glade was on the railroad, wasn't it?
Glade was on the railroad.
What was it at one time a sort of a merchandising center?
Well, I'm sure it was. There was a post office there, I know. But now I'm sure there were stores there, maybe grocery stores mostly. That was before I remember, but I know that the reason I know there was a post office, I have a letter written by my daddy from Hot Springs, Arkansas, to his daddy in Marshall County, and it was sent to Glade, Kentucky, and a letter that was sent to him was postmarked Glade, Kentucky.
A couple of years ago, I interviewed a lady by the name of Minnie Thompson. She was a Darnell, I believe, before she married. She was 101 then. And she told me that she obeyed the gospel at Glade Church of Christ. And that in the 20s became Walnut Grove.
Yes, that's right.
And that she remembered a big general merchandise store and maybe 2 or 3 other businesses that were in Glade at that time.
Well, now, I don't remember those. The only thing I remember was a grocery store there. But I'm sure there were other stores there earlier before I remember.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Union Hill through the 3rd grade. And when the school was moved, I went to Liberty through the 8th grade. I went to high school at Hardin. I went to Murray State.
Well, that's fine. You mentioned Liberty. In an old history, I recall seeing a Liberty school and a Liberty Church of Christ, which was said to be the first of that group in this county. And it gave the name of the original minister, Reuben Starks, who came here in 1832, and it was said to have been, in that old history I read, a little north of Wadesboro. Is that about where it would have been?
Well, do you remember where the last Liberty School was, the one that burned, I'd say 35, 40 years ago?
I've forgotten if I ever knew.
Well, you know the crossroads, you know where Monkey Den is?
Oh, yes, I remember Monkey Den.
Just after you go down the hill going to Monkey Den. You know, there's a creek runs through there. And that's where my uncle, Terrell Haynes, told me that school was located. It was not exactly where the new school was, but it was just down the hill toward Monkey Den.
And someone also said that when they united the remnants of old Wadesboro and Liberty, that was what became Union Hill Church.
Well, now that I don't know. It's been Union Hill ever since I can remember. I know my granddaddy was a member, I'm sure, maybe of Old Liberty at one time when he was younger, because he went from there to Glade after the church was organized at Glade.
All right, you went to this one-room school. Could you tell us some of the teachers that you had? Do you remember any of them?
At Union Hill, I had Chloe Lynn, Bonnie Radcliffe. And I guess
I've heard that name before. That was Van Radcliffe's sister.
Radcliffe's sister. Those were the 2. See, I only went there 3 years.
And she later taught, Mr. Dave Booker one time told me, the old banker at Hardin, that she taught at Hardin School in later years. Well, that's very good. We like to relate some of those older names. And then you went to... did you say?
Liberty School.
Liberty School.
It was also a one-room school, and Garfield Cope and my sister, Eldora Brown. Those were the 2 teachers that I had.
Oh, it was a large school then. Yes. It had 2 teachers.
No, not 2 teachers.
At different times.
He was the first I guess he taught 4 or 5 years. I can't remember exactly. And then she taught after she graduated from the 8th grade, took a test, county test, and made a first-class certificate. And she taught then. He left there, and she taught there. I think 2 years, but I'm not sure about that either.
Well, Miss Nina McWaters told me earlier today that she passed and got a first. There were 3 classes. I never knew that before.
First, second, and third.
Uh-huh. Very good. And then you say you went to Hardin's?
I went to high school in Hardin.
And you were graduated in
1923.
The class of 23. Oh,
There
that
were
must...
8 children,
Uh-huh.
8 graduates.
Yeah. Was Miss Janella Lawrence one of the teachers?
She was a part of the time, and Miss Reba Brown.
Reba Brown Miller.
Reba
Yes.
Brown Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And Brother Johnny White was the principal at that time.
I remember him
Oh,
personally.
yes.
Of course, I remember Reba Brown Miller. She coached a state championship debate team at Paducah Tillman
Long time.
a long, long
But
time
that
ago.
was after she taught us.
Yeah. All right, and then you were teaching probably over those years, and you gradually finished at Murray State. What?
Well, I graduated in 23 from Hardin, and I took this test, the county test, and I made a certificate, so I taught at Unity.
I know exactly where that is.
Some of your relatives went to school with me.
Well,
Vera's brothers and sisters, some of them did.
yeah.
And I taught there in 23, and in 24 and 25 I taught at Liberty, the same place I'd gone through the 8th grade. And in 26 I taught at Elby. You know where Elby is?
Yes, I certainly do. Did you find any problem going back to neighborhoods where they knew you well, or was...
Well, I had been away long enough that none of the children that I had been in school to me.
Well, let me ask
I had the children's children I was usually,
Yes.
that I went to school with.
To get away from school for just a minute, do you remember your grandparents? Anything about them, who they were?
I remember my granddaddy Bolt Hames. My own grandmother Hames died before I was born. And he married Viney Henson. And, of course, she was my grandmother. She was my step-grandmother, but I never knew the difference because she was always Grandma Viney.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And my great-granddaddy was Jarrett Lampkins Hames. And the Hames family came from Virginia here.
Were
They
they
first-
originally from England?
I think so. I think they were originally from England, and they settled in Virginia.
Mhm.
And later they came here.
That was a typical pattern. Of course, Kentucky
that's right.
was a colony of Virginia for a good many years. Well, as a young child, a young lady growing up, can you tell us something about the games you played, or anything about
Well, we played...
social life?
We played the chasing the fox and the dogs, you know. A bunch of
Yeah.
the children would be foxes, and there'd be a couple of dogs.
Uh-huh.
And then we played ante over. We had a ball, and we'd throw it over the house,
Yeah.
choose partners, and
Sure.
that was one of them. And just little things that we could pick up to play with. There was nothing provided for children to
You
play
didn't
with.
have Fisher Price.
We had
on that.
nothing. We'd pick up a grapevine and make a jump rope. And at Liberty there was a gully, and we called that devil across the gully. We would line up some on one side and some on the other and chase it, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and just things like that.
And children were just as happy in those
As
games.
happy as larks.
Yeah. Youth is
Because
wonderful.
we had very few things at home.
And so you didn't expect more.
Didn't expect much at school.
Now, speaking of school again, did you have much discipline problems in those days, or did the parents support the teachers more than they sometimes seem to do now? Or
Well, every place that I taught, except one, the parents were very supportive. I had one place that they got a little disturbed when I corrected the children, but that was soon cleared up, and I had practically no discipline problems. Of course, I had to spank them sometimes.
you taught a lot of different subjects in those schools, didn't you?
Starting with the 1st grade through the 8th. I don't know if I taught or not, but I kept those children.
So you had to teach reading and writing and arithmetic and spelling and geography and
History.
history and
English,
health.
every subject that they taught. But you know, those were good days. There was a lot of good memories of teaching in a one-room school because it was just like a big family. We loved each other. The children loved me, and I loved the children. I still love those children until today. And they learned so much from each other. You'd be surprised how much those children in the first grade picked up from the children in the upper grades.
Oh, I finished from an 8th grade one-room school, and you talk about knowing the first 8 grades. I'd been through it 8 times. So I really knew it. And I suppose all the other children were in the same situation. Outside of school, what kinds of recreations? Someone we've interviewed today mentioned play parties. Were they?
Well, now, I didn't go to play parties. My parents thought it wasn't nice to have play parties, and I didn't go. But I know that they had them. They had dances, but I didn't go to those.
All
I
right.
can't tell you much about that.
So your social life centered around the school and the church?
That's right.
Probably.
I went to church at Union Hill from the time I was old enough to go. I was baptized at Union Hill, and I went there until after I married, and then we moved in the Walnut Grove community.
Now, whom did you marry?
Willie Smith.
And did you have a long courtship period, or was it love at first sight?
Oh, I guess we was courted about a couple of years. Might call it love at first sight. we didn't marry right off of the reel.
Shelby said on one of our interviews today that it seemed like the courtships were longer then, and the marriages lasted longer. And today, sometimes they get married on the second date, and they don't seem to last too long. Well, did you have any children?
Yes, I have 2 children, a son and a daughter. Willie Smith and Phyllis Garland.
And do they live in this area?
Phyllis lives right over here, and Willis Haynes lives over on the lake in the Ponderosa area.
What about grandchildren?
I have 5 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren.
I've been told that's a dangerous question to ask. Have I told you about my grandchildren? I saw that on a bumper sticker not too long.
Sometimes you hear more than you want to. But I have one record that I'm kind of proud of. I taught both of my children and all 5 of my grandchildren. I taught my son just doing a little substitute teaching. But I taught Phyllis from the 1st through the 8th grade.
Do you remember, Miss Tessie, what your check was, the first check you ever drew, how much a month you were paid?
I'm pretty sure it was $58, and I paid $12 a month for board.
Well, so you weren't out a great percentage for room and board.
Room and board.
Was $12 a month. Well, I believe that's better than we're doing now, Shelby, percentage-wise.
I'm sure it is.
What did your husband do when you first married? Was he a farmer?
Yes, he was a farmer. He worked in Michigan a few months after we married at public work, and then we bought a farm down close to Glade.
Oh,
Monroe Cope Place.
Do you have any idea what you had to pay for land then?
Well, I can't tell you exactly, but it was much cheaper than it is today.
Yeah.
We got over 100 acres, and I don't think it cost more than $2,000.
And
it had 2 dwellings on it and a good stock barn.
you grew the traditional West Kentucky crops of corn and tobacco, I suppose.
Strawberries, raspberries, cotton.
Oh, you had cotton. Now, you're the first one that's mentioned cotton. But someone did tell me that at one time there was a cotton gin in Benton. Do you remember if that was true or not?
No, I don't know. I can't remember that.
I know there was one at Murray because I've been to it.
Ray, I can answer that. Yes, there was.
In Benton. And it was operated by Mrs. J.D. Peterson's brother. I can't recall his name right off, but he operated it.
Uh-huh. Well, that's good. I'm glad to get that question answered for certain, Shelby. You said you went to Union Hill Church. Were things very different then? Were the preachers older or younger, or did they preach longer, or?
Well, they preached longer. Brother Johnny White was the preacher. And, of course, we had other preachers, but I can remember him more than any of the rest of them, and he taught quite a long time. But really, you didn't get tired because we didn't have much home entertainment then, except getting out in the yard and playing. We didn't have any radios and any TVs, and we had a telephone. As I'm sure I was, maybe 10 or 15 years old before we had a telephone. But that was about the only entertainment we had.
Well, Cherry's old book said that on the frontier, of course that was an earlier day, that even funerals were entertainment, so to speak. Everybody went to every funeral because it was someplace to go and see people.
Well, one reason, everybody in the community knew everyone else, and they were closer. People were closer in the community than they are now, I think. Now, I don't know I know my neighbors, but as far as having what you call a neighbor, I don't. But when we were younger, we had, after supper at night, we would go visit with the neighbors. They'd come visit with us.
Did you ever tell ghost stories?
My mother did. I never did learn them well enough to tell them. But we just, after supper, our delight was having a big fire in the fireplace and listening to my mother tell ghost stories. She knew so many.
And neighbors would visit back and forth, and you'd, shell peanuts and...
Popcorn, make molasses candy, and just talk and play. The children would play, and the parents would talk. We had lots of fun doing that.
Yes, I can remember. You mentioned Miss Bonnie Ratliff a while ago. When I was real small, we lived across the road from Van and Hattie Ratliff. They had no children, and they thought I was sort of the apple of their eye, and they petted me a lot. And I'd go up there, and Hattie would always have peanuts, popcorn, and she'd pull some taffy candy. I believe they called it pulling it. You've made that, I'm sure.
Willie did. I wasn't much on that, but he really could make good taffy.
And you put together popcorn balls using molasses. My mother's done that.
Sugar.
All right, do you remember you're making your first, say, train ride?
Well, the first any distance, I went to Detroit. I had ridden to Paducah from, I don't remember the first time, but we used to, when we'd go to Paducah, we would go on the train.
You were fairly close to Hardin. What was the city of Hardin like then? Do you remember any of the stores?
Would you mind answering that and tell them I did? There was Ryan Miller. I'm pretty sure that's right. And then there was a Pace, Ted Pace. Those were department stores.
Someone was saying on one of the tapes that there was at one time a drugstore in Hardin, a livery stable, and 2 or 3 blacksmith shops, and that they published a newspaper. The Leona Starks published a newspaper.
There was a newspaper, and there was a blacksmith shop and a drugstore. I remember those.
So Hardin is more a bedroom town today than, because I guess of better roads and you go into larger cities than we did at that time. Could you tell us anything about medical remedies you used? You didn't call a doctor every time a child had a sniffle back then. What did you do?
Well, my mother was a big giver of castor oil. So we took castor oil and calomel, I believe it was calomel pills, she called it. And then the next morning we would take castor oil, turpentine, and Vicks salve, and just things like that.
I heard one say that they took mustard and goose grease and rubbed on the child's chest to cure pneumonia and coughing and so on. Did you ever hear of that one?
No, we never had that one. I guess we didn't have the grease.
Well, did you ever hang a bag of asafoetida about your neck?
Oh, yes, that was one thing. We didn't have any diseases because we all wore the asafoetida, and I happened to be one that liked it, so I'd chew it sometimes.
It smelled a little rank, someone said.
It tasted good.
Oh, it did. Well, Shelby, do you want to get in a question or two? We're rapidly running out of time.
Yes, I would like to talk about, you've discussed recreational activities and when you were young. There was a very famous swimming pool down the road from here.
Union Hill.
That's right. Can you give me something of the history of that? When I came here, it was very, very popular.
Well, I think it was originally dug as a pond, and then they converted it to a swimming pool. I think Mr. Phillip and Lee Redden did that.
Uh-huh.
And the people would go there on Sunday afternoon. There'd be lots of people there, but
Huge
I
crowd.
seldom ever went.
Oh, you didn't?
I doubt if I ever went on Sunday.
Well, I knew it was very popular. What was the name of it? I can't. It's
Peggy Ann.
Peggy Ann.
Peggy Ann. It was close to Peggy Ann Spring.
Peggy Ann Springs. It had a spring that ran constantly with water in it.
Furnished the water.
Well, I knew it was very popular, and it made this area rather famous because people came from great many people came from Benton out here on the summertime to go for an evening swim.
Well, I never went swimming in it, but I have been there a few times.
Now, it's disappeared now.
Yes, it's all gone.
If you had your life to live over again, would you still prefer to live here in Marshall County?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's good.
Well, Shelby hadn't missed a one on that yet. Everybody we've interviewed said that they
Nothing better than Marshall
like
County.
Marshall County. Well, we certainly want to thank you, Miss Tessie Smith. This is Ray Mofield speaking on behalf of Shelby McCallum, and WCBL is sponsoring this series on behalf of the State Archives in Frankfort, the Forrest Pogue Oral History Library at Murray State, and, of course, the Marshall County Library, our prime beneficiary. That concludes our program for today.